Every day, other men are testing you. They drop their salary in conversation. They flex their gym numbers. They try to make you feel smaller so they can feel bigger. Most guys play along. They compete back. They get pulled into the game. But you're not most guys. By the end of this video, you're going to learn the exact 3-pillar framework that makes you untouchable. You'll discover the internal scorecard that eliminates comparison anxiety, the outcome independence that makes manipulation impossible, and the self-mastery approach that gives you unshakable frame control. This is the precise mental framework that makes every interaction with other men fundamentally different. You're going to walk away with something you can apply immediately. A mindset that makes you impossible to intimidate, compete with, or control through status games. You'll never again feel that urge to prove yourself when someone tries to flex on you. You'll never again feel threatened by another man's success. You'll never again get pulled into competitions that make you smaller. Here's how it works. Here's the first part of that unshakable mindset. You need to understand the difference between an internal scorecard and an external one. Most men live by an external scorecard. They measure their worth by what other people think, what other people have, how they rank compared to others. When someone else wins, they feel like they're losing. When someone else gets recognition, they feel invisible. But the men who can't be manipulated, they operate from an internal scorecard. Their sense of worth comes from their own standards, their own progress, their own values. Another man's success doesn't threaten them because they're not playing the same game. You walk into a room, and most guys immediately start calculating where they rank. Who makes more money? Who's in better shape? Who gets more attention? Their whole sense of self becomes about beating other guys who don't even know they're in a competition. But the man with an internal scorecard walks into that same room thinking different thoughts. He's not asking, how do I compare? He's asking, how can I add value here? What can I learn? Who can I help? Same room, same people, completely different experience. You see another man succeed, and if you're operating from an external scorecard, it feels like a threat. His win feels like your loss. His achievement makes you question your own worth. But if you're operating from an internal scorecard, another man's success becomes data, not threat. You think, what did he do that I can learn from? Or good for him, and you move on with your day. The external scorecard makes you a slave to other people's opinions and achievements. The internal scorecard makes you free. Confidence that needs comparison isn't confidence. It's insecurity with good marketing. The men you actually respect most, they all operate from internal scorecards. They don't show off. They don't try to make you jealous. They don't need to prove they're alpha because their confidence comes from within, not from comparison. Meanwhile, men with external scorecards exhaust themselves trying to win a game that truly powerful men aren't even playing. When's the last time you felt genuinely confident without needing to compare yourself to someone else? When's the last time another man's success made you feel inspired instead of threatened? If you can't answer that immediately, you're operating from an external scorecard. And it's costing you everything. Drop a fire emoji if you're ready to switch scorecards. Here's the second part of that untouchable mindset. Outcome independence. This is where philosophy meets practical power. The Stoics had a concept they called preferred indifference. Things that are nice to have but don't determine your worth or happiness. Money, recognition, other people's approval, all preferred indifference. Most men are outcome dependent. They need the promotion to feel successful. They need the recognition to feel valuable. They need other men's respect to feel confident. When they don't get these things, they feel like failures. But outcome independence means you prefer certain results. But your inner state doesn't depend on getting them. You'd like the promotion, but you're fine without it. You'd enjoy the recognition, but you don't need it to know your worth. You appreciate respect, but you don't require it to feel confident. Alexander the Great conquered most of the world by age 30. He had kings bowing to him, armies following his every order, cities named after him. But when he met a philosopher named Diogenes, who lived in a barrel and owned nothing, Alexander said, "If I wasn't Alexander, I'd want to be Diogenes." Think about that. The most powerful conqueror in history recognized that real strength didn't come from outcomes, from conquering or owning or being praised. It came from not needing any of it. That's outcome independence. When you're outcome independent, other men can't manipulate you through competition because you're not desperate for the prizes they're competing for. They can brag about their salary, and you genuinely don't care, because your confidence doesn't come from making more money than them. They can try to make you jealous of their success, but jealousy requires attachment to outcomes you don't have. Your independence isn't being stuck up. It's where your real power lives. The men who seem most confident, most attractive, most respected, they all have this quality. They want good things to happen, but they're complete whether they do or not. This makes them magnetic because people can sense they're not needy, not desperate, not performing for outcomes. When you need specific outcomes to feel good about yourself, you become manipulatable by anyone who can threaten or promise those outcomes. When you're outcome independent, you become unmanipulatable. The paradox is that when you stop needing certain outcomes, you often get them more easily. When you don't need other men's respect to feel confident, you naturally command more respect. When you don't need to win status games to feel powerful, you become more powerful. Being desperate pushes people away. Being sovereign pulls them in. Here's the third pillar of that unshakable mindset. Understanding that all frame battles are really battles for self-mastery. Frame control isn't about dominating other people. It's about having such a strong relationship with yourself that other people's frames can't shake you. Most men think frame battles are external. Someone tries to make them feel small, so they fight back. Someone challenges their status, so they compete harder. Someone disrespects them, so they get defensive. But here's what the truly powerful men understand. Every external frame battle is really an internal battle between your ego and your authentic self. First, there's the status chaser. This guy can't talk without dropping his salary, his bench press numbers, or stories about women he's been with. He sees every conversation as a contest he has to win. He name drops people he knows, brags about what he's done, and turns every story into proof that he's better than you. What's really happening here? His ego is so fragmented that he needs constant external validation to feel whole. He's not trying to impress you. He's trying to convince himself. Every brag is really him asking, "Am I enough?" Oh, right, in disguise. He thinks he's showing value, but what he's really showing is how little he values himself. Then there's the status rejecter. This guy figured out that status games are toxic, so he's given up on all success and ambition. He calls successful men try-hards and says caring about achievement is shallow. He thinks he's being authentic, but often he's just hiding from the possibility of failing. What's happening here? His ego is so afraid of not measuring up that it convinces him the game isn't worth playing. But this is still the ego running the show, just in the opposite direction. But then there's the third type, the status sovereign. This guy has done the inner work. He's not trying to prove anything to anyone because he's already proven everything to himself. He's successful, but not competitive. He's accomplished, but not arrogant. He's powerful, but not petty. When someone tries to compete with him, he doesn't take the bait because he's not playing that game. When someone tries to diminish him, it doesn't land because his sense of worth doesn't come from their opinion. When someone tries to manipulate him through status, it's like trying to control someone who speaks a different language. The status sovereign learned the most important lesson. Real power doesn't need to prove itself. It just is. Here's the insight that changes everything. Authentic dominance only gets built through self-mastery, not other mastery. Every hour you spend trying to control other people's opinions of you is an hour stolen from becoming the kind of person whose opinion of himself actually matters. Your relationship with yourself determines every other relationship you have. The men who are hardest to break are the ones who've already broken themselves down and built themselves back up. This is what I call quiet dominance. Power that doesn't need to announce itself because it's too busy being useful. Frame control through self-possession rather than other manipulation. When you master yourself, other people's attempts to throw you off balance become irrelevant. Not because you're fighting them, but because you're grounded in something they can't touch. Now here's where it gets powerful. When you combine internal scorecard, outcome independence, and frame control through self-mastery, you become essentially unmanipulatable. Think about it. Someone tries to make you jealous by bragging about their success, but you operate from an internal scorecard, so their external achievements don't threaten your sense of worth. You're outcome independent, so you don't need what they have to feel complete. And you've mastered yourself enough that their attempt to throw you off balance doesn't work. What happens? Nothing. Their manipulation bounces off you like it never happened. But here's the deeper truth. This isn't about becoming cold or disconnected. It's about becoming so grounded in who you are that other people's insecurities can't shake you. Who are you trying to prove you're better than? And why do you think their opinion of your worth matters? When you achieve something, whose jealousy are you hoping to create? That guy from high school who used to be ahead of you? That coworker who got the promotion you wanted? That friend who seems to have everything figured out? Every win you go after, mainly to prove you're better than someone else, is a chain that keeps you enslaved to their progress, their failures, their opinion of your value. You think you're building dominance, but you're actually building dependency. The success you're proud of, are you proud of it because it actually matters to you, or because it puts you ahead of someone else? Can you even tell the difference anymore? This is why most men stay trapped. They think they're competing with others, but really they're running from themselves. Every external competition is just an attempt to avoid the only competition that matters: becoming who you're actually capable of being. Every moment you spend trying to be better than other men is a moment stolen from becoming the man you're actually capable of being. Your need to compete isn't strength. It's fear of not being enough on your own. The most radical thing you can do in a world obsessed with ranking men is to become unrankable. The most rebellious thing you can do in a comparison world is to refuse to be compared to anyone except the man you were yesterday. When you combine these three pillars, internal scorecard, outcome independence, and self-mastery, something remarkable happens. Other people's attempts to manipulate you through status become not just ineffective, but irrelevant. You don't get defensive because there's nothing to defend. You don't get competitive because there's nothing to prove. You don't get jealous because there's nothing you desperately need. Real power doesn't react. It just is. So let's bring this all together. You now understand the 3 pillars of becoming unmanipulatable. Internal scorecard, measuring yourself by your own standards instead of other people's achievements. Outcome independence, wanting good things but not needing them to feel complete. Frame control through self-mastery, being so grounded in who you are that other people's attempts to throw you off balance become irrelevant. When you live from this framework, everything changes. Remember that moment I talked about at the beginning? When another guy tries to show you up and you feel that urge to compete back. When you're operating from these 3 pillars, that feeling just disappears. Someone brags about their salary, and you genuinely don't care because your worth doesn't come from making more money than them. Someone tries to make you jealous of their success, but jealousy requires attachment to outcomes you don't desperately need. Someone tries to compete with you, but you're not playing that game anymore. Your need to compete for validation was showing. Now your natural confidence can speak for itself. This isn't about becoming passive or unambitious. It's about becoming so focused on your own path that other men's attempts to distract you become background noise. Men respect you not because you've beaten them in some fake competition, but because you clearly don't need to compete with them to feel powerful. Your confidence becomes real because it doesn't depend on being better than them. Your presence becomes commanding because it's not performing for anyone's approval. The man who masters these 3 pillars becomes magnetic without effort. He gets respect without demanding it. He becomes powerful without needing to prove it. Your real power, the power you build when you're not trying to beat anyone, that's where your dominance actually lives. That's where respect gets earned. That's where your worth gets established. Every private standard you maintain, every moment you choose your internal scorecard over external validation, every time you stay outcome independent when others are desperate. That's what makes you unshakable. You don't need to announce these changes. You don't need to explain your standards. You don't need to prove you're above status games. Just become the man who operates from internal scorecard, outcome independence, and self-mastery. And watch how impossible you become to manipulate. If you're ready to start living from this framework, if you're done being controlled by other men's insecurities and competitions, drop these words in the comments. I compete with myself. This is just the beginning of understanding real masculine power in a world designed to keep men fighting each other instead of building themselves. Next week, I'm breaking down the dangerous man's silence. Why the most feared men aren't the ones who never shut up about what they can do, but the ones who've learned that mystery is more powerful than showing off. You'll learn how to use strategic silence to make other men wonder what you're capable of instead of telling them. Your silence is scarier than your words. The week after that, we're diving into the untouchable frame. How to develop such unshakable inner strength that other men's attempts to manipulate, intimidate, or compete with you become irrelevant noise that can't touch your core. And then we're getting into the deep work. Building unbreakable inner game. The daily practices that create such powerful self-respect that external validation becomes not just unnecessary, but insulting. Your only real competition is who you were yesterday. If you want to continue this journey from status seeking to self-sovereignty, from competing with others to mastering yourself, from acting dominant to being dominant. Hit subscribe and the notification bell. This channel isn't for men who want to stay comfortable in their need for other men's validation. It's for men who want to become so powerful that other men's opinions become irrelevant noise. The question is, are you ready to stop playing their games? In the end, the scariest question isn't whether you can beat other men. The scariest question is, can you respect the man you become when you stop trying to? Will you recognize your own worth when it's not measured against someone else's weakness? Will you find your own strength when it's not built on someone else's defeat? Will you discover your own power when it doesn't depend on someone else's acknowledgement? Because somewhere beneath all the competition, beneath all the desperate need to prove you're superior, there's a man you've never met. A man who doesn't need to be better than others to feel valuable. A man who doesn't need to win status games to feel powerful. A man who doesn't need their jealousy because he's too busy earning his own respect. That man is waiting for you in the quiet between competitions. He's waiting for you in the space between comparisons. He's waiting for you in the moments when nobody's keeping score and you get to decide what actually matters. You were taught that being dominant meant beating other men, but your need to compete for validation was never strength. It was fear of not being enough without the victory. The status world wants to convince you that if you're not better than other men, you're not valuable. But the deepest truth is the opposite. Men who need to be better than others to feel valuable aren't valuable at all. Your need to compete for validation was showing. Now your natural dominance can speak for itself. Your real power is calling. It doesn't need to beat anyone. It just needs you to stop playing games designed to keep you small.